Good morning, everyone. We're going to talk about a few very interesting topics, and we'll talk about one of the princes of Dubai, one of the Emirates of Dubai, and we'll talk about our Parsha, of course, the laws of the Parsha. And we'll talk about a lot about our generation, because it's a very interesting generation, and many will see our generation in a bad way, or they would see the disadvantages in our generation. And as the generation brings all these new types of behavior, these behaviors also bring wonder. We've got to understand what is basically, what's the key to our generation. So let's start from our Parsha, because our Parsha starts from the words, Ve'ele hamishpatim asher Tasim lifneim. And these are the laws that you should put in front of them, which is referring to Am Yisrael. And these are the laws means, in addition to the previous Parsha, in addition to what we learned just on Shabbos, what we read just on Shabbos, Hashem giving us the 10 commandments. In addition to that, here are the laws of Am Yisrael. These are called Mishpatim. These are called laws because they are strictly logical laws. These are all the laws that have to do with. These are the laws that have to do with. Let's say a person that borrows something from someone else. What does he have to do? What is his obligation? What are his rights? A person that stole something from someone, a person that caused any kind of harm or damage to someone else. What are the laws? What are his obligations? And what are his rights? This is our Parsha. This is, to put it in simple words, this is pure logic. This is like studying law in a university, so to speak. But there is something very special about this first pasuk and about the Parsha. Although we are talking about Mishpatim, about laws, the Parsha tells us, the Eila Mishpatim Asher Tosim Lifneihem, in front or before of Am Yisrael. Why does it say that these are the laws that you should put in front of them? 3 explanations, and these are 3 levels. Simple explanations. The first idea is Lifnei means in front of them, but do not bring your case in front of a Gentile judge. Even though we are talking about logical laws, so a Gentile could probably also tell us what the law would be, even though we still do not bring our cases in front of a Gentile law and in front of any civil law. We bring these cases in front of what's called a bet din. That is the first explanation. And remember, the question is why? If it's logical, if it's all based on the same logic, what does it make a difference who judges me? The Gentile's logic is exactly the same as the Torah's logic, so perfect. Why can't he judge me? That's question number 1. The second explanation is a bit of a deeper explanation in the words in front of them, which means in front of them means explain it to them. Don't just bring these laws and tell them, you know what? You're obligated to do the laws and that's it. We're not going to put in any effort to explain why. Just keep them just because I commanded. No, the Torah is telling them, which means these are the laws that you should explain to them, in other words. The question is on this explanation, why? You don't need much explanation to tell a person, you know what, don't steal. And if you steal, you've got to pay what you stole, plus you've got to pay a fine. These are logical laws. What does it mean, explain to them? It says that modesty, the Talmud tells us, that if the Torah would not teach us about modesty, we would learn modesty from a cat. We would learn modesty from a cat because these are such simple laws, as we say, that these are common sense. Everyone agrees to them. So what is so special, about judging, bringing your case in front of a Jewish judge that goes by the Jewish law and the Torah law, and not just by a civil authority and a civil judge? The third explanation is even deeper. The third explanation means not only explain to them these laws, which once again we said why, they are common sense, everyone knows the laws. But the third explanation is lipnimiyusam. Lifneya means to their inner part, to their soul. In other words, Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu, you know what, when you teach Am Yisrael these laws, make sure to connect their neshama, their soul, to the law. And here, once again, according to this third Perush, these laws do not need the soul involved. They don't need the neshama here. These laws make total sense without having a neshama, without connecting your special neshama into your understanding. We could perfectly relate to the laws. We could perfectly connect to the laws. So why does the Torah bring this extra word lifneim into the logical laws? And this is the key to understanding our generation. Let's talk a bit about our generation. So first of all, there's been a Jewish movement when we come to talk about keeping the mitzvot. Today, people keep the mitzvot in an extra way, which is called, in the words of the terminology of the Torah, is that the idea is hidur mitzvah. Hidur mitzvah is not to do a mitzvah just with the basic level of doing the mitzvah, but you are upgrading it, you are doing it in a better manner, in a better way. And let's say, for example, the esrog that you use on Sukkot. So you can buy a kosher one, but then you want to buy a better one, which is a more hidur one. But it's not only that in our Jewish life, we try and bring a lot of soul into our mitzvot. It's also, if we look outside, and this is a quote that someone mentioned it to me. It's from the Emirate of Dubai, or one of the princes of Dubai. And he said something very interesting that I'm sure many people think about and can relate to, but we've got to see, what does Judaism tell us about it? What is our generation? Is our generation a bad generation? Are we all into enjoying life and less being committed to life? And here's what he said. He said that hard times create tough people, hard people. Tough people, strong people create easy times. And easy times create weak people. And those weak people create hard, difficult times. It's a very interesting idea. And he brought it, and people today use it, explaining our generation, saying that our generation is a very weak generation. Our generation is they do what's easy, what's fun, what's nice, what they enjoy, and they aren't as much committed. If we would take if we would look at our parents and our grandparents, and for sure our great-grandparents, they lived in hard times. They lived in tough times, and they were very strong people. In what way were they strong people? In a way that they did things because they were obligated to do it. They didn't look for their own pleasure. They knew that you have to go and work. They didn't pick jobs according to the amount of relation that they had to this job. They knew that they had to find a job in order to make a living. Our generation is very different in that way. And the rates of people changing jobs and looking for all these interesting jobs is very, very high. So is that good or bad? The people seem to look at it in a very bad way. There might be certain bad parts to it, but there is also something very, very good to our generation. And we'll talk about it in a moment. Here's also something else that we can see. Elon Musk. He is an entrepreneur. He's an engineer, a very interesting, innovative individual. And he did create, build, and quite a few amazing things, such as the electric car Tesla and SpaceX. He wants to basically make the universe a multi-planet universe where we could also live on Mars, for example. That is one of his dreams. And he says it, and it's interesting sometimes to listen to his words, because he said, when you wake up in the morning, you have to be excited about what you're going to do. And that's why he says he comes up with all these interesting, and some people will say quite weird ideas like living on Mars. But he says you've got to live for something that inspires you, something that's a bit more than the daily basis need. So I'm bringing his quote just to show that it's something common to our generation in general, where people relate much more to what inspires them, what they enjoy, what they like, and not what they are obligated to do, not what they must do, not what they should do. And is this good or bad? So most people will say immediately, well, if someone does something just because he likes it, this is very bad. Of course. You cannot do something just when you like it. But there is a big advantage when you like what you are doing. And we know, the Rebbe taught us, that if you see something in the generation, you see something in the world around us, and this is a general concept in Hasidut about divine providence, we have to see the source to that in the Torah, because it all begins in the Torah. It's not only that the Torah has some kind of opinion about it, it's more that it begins in the words of the Torah. It begins in the approach of the Torah to this idea. And it's very interesting because the Torah has a lot what to say about it. And this is our parsha. Let's talk about Matan Torah. What was the purpose during Matan Torah? So there's a famous medrash. Hasidus uses it a lot. La'asa is the purpose of Matan Torah, which means the purpose of the physical mitzvot is to create a home for Hashem here down in this low earth. La'asot lo yitbarach dira b'tachtonim. That is the quote. To create a home for Hashem. Now, there are two parts to creating a home. And if you ever built a home for yourself, so you know that for sure, it doesn't have to be that you build it, but you can, even renting a home, there are two parts that you've got to notice about this home, about this house. And this is also when we come to create the home for Hashem. The idea is that there's the first technical part, the foundations, the surface, the floor, the walls, of course. They include the windows and the roof, the ceiling. That's the technical part of the house. And that is one part that we've got to pay attention to, but there's an additional part. Once we created the home itself, the physical part, the foundations, etc., we've got to make sure that this house is a livable house, a house that is full of light, a house that you feel nice entering. It's not just that you need a box to live in, 4 walls and a roof, but there's a very important part to the way that this house feels to you. There's a very important part to the light that is in the house, to the decorations in the house, to the way, the patterns that are in the house. This is a very important part to the world itself. When we build for Hashem a house here in the world, in this low world, we do 2 things. By the technical mitzvah, we create the foundations, we create the ceiling, we create the floor, we create the walls, etc. When we do our mitzvahs with passion, when we do the mitzvahs because we connect to them, when we do the mitzvahs because we relate and understand them, and more than that, when we do the mitzvah because our soul is connected to the mitzvot, in that case, we bring light to this house of Hashem. Not only we bring light, we create decorations in this house of Hashem. And this is very important. Which kind of house does Hashem want to enter? Just a ceiling and 4 walls around him? No. He wants to enjoy the house. He wants to have a house that is full of light, that is comfortable, that is with the best decor possible. And this is where we do a Hidur mitzvah. A Hidur mitzvah shows that we are actually there. We are actually at the point where we can relate to the mitzvot, when we can connect to the mitzvot, when we like doing a mitzvah. So once again, our generation in particular, and this is the idea of our Parsha, but our generation in general, as we saw, likes to relate to what they do. Not only just to do it strictly because they are obligated, but because they bring their soul and their devotion to it. The same goes when we keep mitzvot today. Look at the mitzvot that Am Yisrael do. The mitzvot that Am Yisrael today do, they do it with all of their heart. People don't do mitzvot because they're obligated, but because they relate to it. Of course, you cannot stop and say, you know what, if I don't relate to a mitzvah, I'm not going to keep it. No, there's a condition. You've got to have the foundations of this house. This is very important. But there's a tremendous advantage when someone adds to this obligation also his devotion and his love while he does a mitzvah. This is our generation. This is the mitzvot that we do. And this is related also today to the fact that people express their feelings much more. Do I like this? Do I not like it? I like my job. I don't like it. And I will find a job that I like. The Rebbe always told people in letters that they should take on a certain job in one condition, that they'll do it with meretz and bitachon. Meretz means that they would do the job with a lot of energy. Bitachon with a lot of trust, a lot of certainty, which means you believe in what you're doing. It's very interesting to see it. In addition to that, we see it in our Parsha. Our Parsha is Ve'ela Mishpatim Asher Tasim Lifneim, which means the Mishpatim, the laws, you've got to put it in front of them. We said 3 explanations to the word in front of them, before them. Don't bring it just to a civil judge, which means don't bring it to any random person that just has common sense. No, bring it to someone that you could relate to. It's got to be a Jewish judge. The second explanation is Ve'ela Mishpatim Asher Tasim Lifneim, before them, explain it to them. It's not enough just to say, well, this is the law, it makes sense, do it. No, even though it makes sense, even though we can, everyone knows that that's what you should do, but explain it to them. And the third explanation is bring in the neshama, bring in the pnimius, Ve'ela Mishpatim Asher Tasim Lifneim Lepnimiusam, bring out their soul, their neshama, and make sure that the neshama is also connected to these mitzvot. So thank you very much for taking part in the shir, and wishing you all not only an obligated week, but a happy week and a joyful week. And I'm looking forward to seeing you, Be'ezrat Hashem, next week. Shavua Tov.